So 1.5 bias in sampling. So what is a bias thing? So a biased sampling, it means that sample that you select or chose does not represent the population overall. And a good example, the one I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to repeat it again just in case. A researcher goes to Santa Ana College campus, and then he wants to convince people that there's so many students at Santa Ana College they smoke, okay, student wise. And then what they do, he or she, they try to find who's smoking on campus, and they just pretend they don't know if they smoke or not, and they go ask them, hey, do you smoke? And they're going to say, of course, yes. And the researcher already knows, he or she knows that these people smoke, so they focus more on the people who smoke on campus. So this way they sample, let's say, ask 1000 students. They ask 1000 students, and then the students, so the students that he or she questions, they, most of them, they smoke. So then they find out of 1000 students, like maybe I don't know, 80% of them smoke. And then the researcher will say that based on the sample that I collected, it means 80% of all Santa Ana College students, they smoke. That's what a bias is. So the bias is bias sampling. Basically, the result that you get out of this study does not represent the entire population. That's what bias is. Is that okay? Any questions about this? So the book states that the bias sampling is basically a technique that is used by a researcher to obtain samples individuals, tends to favor one part of the population over the other or over another, just so they can get to the result that they need. And this can occur, of course, because the sample they collected was not randomly selected. They selected people who really smoke on campus. Another term here in the bias sampling is called non-response bias. So I'm going to write that down. Anyone heard about this before? So what I'm going to do is split you guys with using the breakout rooms, and then just the name itself. From the name, I want you to discuss together why do we call it this way? Can we conclude something out of this or not? And then we can discuss it after you guys talk about it. Let's discuss this. What do you think? What's a non-response bias? Who's gonna tell us what it is?
We got when people don't want to answer the survey because they feel uncomfortable answering or they just ignore the survey in general.
Yeah. So it says non-response, so they're not gonna respond, right? Non-response. And what else? What other things we can discuss about this? What else you want to add about this?
It's when they're very limited to their options. Like, for instance, if you ask them, how was your food? And everything's like good, excellent, perfect. Like, it's not giving them a broad options of like best to worst.
I see. Okay, that's a good one. What other things that can cause this bias thing? What
They
can
have like different opinions.
they have different opinions?
Yeah, our group had a really good example, like in a political, like let's say survey. If you have like two specific groups and 75% of one group did not want to answer the question, then now your leftover sample is completely skewed, is biased because you have an entire group and then only 25% of another group.
Yes. Another thing, what can cause this? Sometimes, you receive surveys even in the mail, right? Or maybe on the plane, maybe somewhere else. And then guess what happened? People sometimes they forget to return the survey, right? That's another reason for this bias. What can be other reasons?
Request for sensitive information.
Sensitive information, people feel like they don't feel good about providing that information. What other things that can cause this is that sometimes, let's say you are in the medical field and then you get a survey about something related to medical stuff, then you would be motivated to answer, to go through the survey. But to me, let's say I don't like medical stuff, I'm not going to go through the survey, right? If I got something in mathematics, yes, I would do it. I was like, oh yeah, I know a lot of stuff about this, let me do it. But some people might not like math and then they will end up not having this. Now, what are ways to avoid non-response bias? Are there any ways to avoid this?
Making things confidential so that people feel safe.
Yes, good job. That's one way. Make sure another way is that the person who's running the survey or the researcher, they are really well-trained staff member. They know what they're doing, not they just hire random people to do it. So you need to make sure we have well-trained staff to run the survey. What else? Because I said that people forget to fill out the survey or mail out the survey or respond. Maybe a reminder could work out. Another one that Daniel shared with us, rewarding people for taking the survey. So a lot of times, like, hey, you're gonna win a $50 Amazon gift card. That people say, okay, let me try it. Who knows? Maybe I will win it. Who knows, right? You try to offer them something. Another thing that I personally like to do, and I always remember this, if the survey is too long, I'm not gonna do it. Like I was like, it's gonna take forever. That's why a lot of people, what they do two things. One, at the beginning of the survey or before you even click on the survey, it tells you the time it's gonna take you to fill out the survey. It tells you 1 to 2 minutes. When you say 1 2 minutes, okay, that's reasonable. It's easy. Let me do it. Right? That's something. And then at the same time, that creates what we call a short survey. So when they tell you 1 to 2 minutes, means that's a short survey. But sometimes they trick you. Like sometimes they say, oh, it's only 5 questions. But then you click on number 1 and you're done, go to number 2. And when you are number 2, then you have A, B, C, D. It's kind of like 5 questions within 1 question. They can trick you on this. So when I say short survey, I really mean it short survey. So that's a good discussion about this. Now, what other terms? Now, since we talk about non-response, is there something called response bias? The answer is yes. So, you want to discuss it together first? Now, what did you guys get? Who's going to tell us about the response bias? Something? No one?
We were saying that there could be a bias based on like what people want to hear. So an example that my group used was that, if you're like, I worked as a personal trainer and people always said that they worked out, 3 or 4 times a week, when in reality they were working out maybe once or twice.
Yes.
Would create a bias in your sample size.
Yes. Yeah, even today, like I was sitting with a group of like three friends. One of them is like really talkative, and then like the other two guys, they want to always agree with him. So no matter what he was saying, they say, "Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, we agree." But in fact, in their mind, like they don't agree with him. Like the truth is not. That's not the right thing. So that's called response bias. Like they're responding to him and telling him that, "Oh yeah, this is true. What you're saying is the best thing. Oh, that's the best way." But that's not really the best way. But just to show him that they support his talk or whatever he was saying, you know. So that's called response bias. Um, what else we have? Like, can someone give me another example on about response bias?
Maybe if there's a reward involved, they would probably change their answers to fit whatever the guidelines are to getting the reward.
Yeah, that's what other things that we do on a daily basis or something, like something, not daily basis, but something we have more like kind of personal application, something. Mm,
I have one like if you were to take a
survey.
I mean, it's a personal application, but I think it's really relevant. Like, if you were to take a research study in like a place like North Korea or China, where the government makes it illegal to say certain things, then you have a response bias because that person is changing their response based on fear or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, good job. So that's another example. Another thing, you know, with all these non-response bias, response bias, or things that we have like this causes or this results in something called non-sampling errors. Non-sampling errors. So that all these things that we go through, the non-response bias, response bias, or data entry errors, cause what we call non-sampling errors. Non-sampling errors. And the sampling errors in general, those results from someone using a sample to estimate the some information or drew conclusion about the entire population. And why does that happen? What causes this sampling error? Well, the sampling error can happen or occur when there's no enough information or not enough information about the population exists. That can cause a sampling error. Can someone think about an example about sampling error where there's no enough information about a population or incomplete information?
Yeah, for COVID, in the beginning when we didn't really understand like the infection rate and we didn't have enough cases.
Not enough cases, yes.
Yeah,
yep.
enough cases.
And even up until today, what things that we know about COVID-19? Or for example, like they told us, how can it be transferred from one person to another? Was it correct what they told us at the beginning? That if you sneeze, you can get it, or if you touch a metal surface, or I don't know, some other stuff, right? Like, how do we have like a confirmation of all this stuff? Is it confirmed? No one is saying anything. It's not confirmed, right? We don't know. Like even at other countries, they tell you, oh, no, you have to be 6 feet away. Why do we have to be 6 feet away from each other? Well, they think that corona can be transformed from one person to another using by this, and this, but these methods are not yet confirmed, right? So then you sometimes the sampling error, you try to collect a sample that of people who maybe uh, like had a party together, right? A sample, and then think like, oh, this, the entire population is gonna happen if something happened within that sample, then it's gonna happen to the entire population. Who knows? I mean, what happened? How this was transformed? Was it like people shake hands? People like, I don't know. So it's kind of strange up until now, and then we don't have like exact information or the sampling that they're doing or working on uh, has been, I think, causing errors, and for researchers, they don't have really solid reasons why this is happening or what is causing this and things like that. But in general, like you can pick so many other examples about sampling error easier than COVID-19. Can someone think of another example? How about if someone wants to go on campus and then ask students about their heights, and then just randomly or somehow by mistake they question 10 people, and then turn out those 10 people are really tall? So what's going to happen? So you can draw a conclusion about the population of this campus, of the all the students. All the students, the average height of the students is like 5.5 feet, but in reality it's not, right? So you pick students, but you pick not students from at different heights, but most of the students you selected were really tall, and then you thought like most students are tall at Santa Ana College, but the truth is not. So that's called sampling errors.
I think that's why it's probably really important to have a big enough sample that you can't randomly, by mistake choose
Yes.
2,000 really tall people.
And that all falls under one thing that I mentioned earlier, is that the researcher has to be trained well enough to know what could be a good sample size to choose. Okay, that's why. But not you send a random student and go ask them, hey, go do this for us, do that, without actually train them how to pick the sample, what size the sample should be, and things like that.